Good morning, YouTube. It is September 12th, 2017, and I was getting ready to head out to a all-day session with David Cameron, HVACR training at HVACRskills.com. And I got a phone call from a man that said that he had a water problem. He said that he had water dumping out of his ceiling and thought that he had a busted water line. Of course, technically I don't do plumbing, but I agreed to come out here and take a look at his water line and shut the incoming water out. He's unable to get into the crawl space, so it seemed like the right thing to do, even if I couldn't, actually address his plumbing issue altogether. But I got the water line shut off, and he let me get into the attic just to see if maybe there was a roof leak or a leak that was coming from the attic but not evident on the second floor. And I discovered that he has the old polybutylene PEX pipe. The water line comes up through the wall between the hallway and the laundry room on the second floor, and appears that if that's not where it's leaking, then it's coming from where it comes up the wall. So got the water line off, and now we're headed over to the David Cameron training facility. We're going to shoot some video for him to use in promotion of his training site, and see where that goes. I'm looking forward to getting that learning by osmosis while he's teaching the texts that are in the class, and I'm shooting video. We'll be able to learn something on the side. So maybe we can offer a little bit of something here and there to give you another peek into David Cameron HVACR training and the work that he does there. So stay tuned, and we'll check in with you throughout the day here.
This is service strategies for new technicians. Welcome to the service side. Welcome to the service side. We're going to start out kind of getting our mind thinking a little bit towards some of the stuff we're going to be talking about today. But what I want to make sure we do is take all the different pieces, because 2 years of experience, maybe 2 days of experience, and somewhere in between, that still means each one of us have run into a certain amount of service calls or a certain type of scenarios that nobody else in this room has seen, right? So it doesn't matter if you got 2 months of experience or 2 years or 20 years, guys. There's always something to learn from somebody else you're in the room with. Now I want you guys to think about, again, service strategies. Ron, you've been in this 2 years, man. You probably already have a strategy of sort, right?
Yes, sir.
What's one of the first things that you do on a service call?
Well, we'll initially go in with some understanding of what the call is, but I always talk to the customer to find out exactly what's going on with the system.
That's awesome.
And then I also ask them, have they tried anything? because a lot of times our customer will do something but not tell us.
Fantastic.
You know, so we're facing situations where they've gone in and just manipulated something, but I just try to get all the information I can up front about what's going on with the system, so that way I kind of know how to attack it.
We are going to talk some about the air side, the electrical side, the refrigerant side of the system. Want to make sure we clarify some of the things that might be maybe a little murky, maybe a little bit confusing to some of you guys. And at the same time, we want to take those pieces and we want to snap them into a procedure that, guys, it's going to work every time. You don't have to know everything there is to know about that machine. You don't have to be able to fix every single job that you roll up on if you've got the right resources to count on, right? And sometimes think about it. You ask the customer, how, can you tell me a little bit about what's going on? And they say, look, man, lock the door when you're gone, because I got to go. And you don't get much feedback, right? And then you'll have other customers, can you tell me anything about what's going on? And they're like, man, I'm glad you asked. And they break out this, I don't even know if you guys know what green bar is, but they break out all these papers and these documents they've printed out. Oh yeah, I can tell you what the temperature was inside, outside, the phase of the moon, what I had for supper that night. Any of that information, we're going to steal, whether I need it or not. We're going to take that from that customer. We're going to say, man, thank you very much. That's going to help me out, right? And part of the first part of the class is going to be just talking through some of that process. I want to make sure when we come to the point of saying obtaining refrigerant circuit measurements, well, I want to make sure everybody in here is comfortable with some of the key measurements in the refrigerant circuit. What are and the very best jobs to measure everything you can are the jobs that are working right. Doesn't that give you a benchmark for kind of a normal level of that particular reading?
Right.
So the next time y'all are on that warranty call or on that PM call and you're like, man, this is boring. Check everything you can on that job. You're going to learn more about the refrigerant flow through that system and how that thing operates. But Brandon, if you don't mind, my friend, tell me how long you've been in the business?
I'm brand new to the business. I'm actually only been working for a month.
All right.
So, yeah. I work with my uncle, and he thought this class would help me out, give me a good foundation, so that's why I'm here.
Fantastic. I'm going to start off a little bit on the electrical side, but we've got a set of procedures starting on the bottom of page 27 that is triage for no start. And then a little bit of a graphical look at this, guys, is what I call a no start flow chart. So we're going to make some refrigerant measurements today, and sometimes we don't know what to do with superheat and subcooling. I want you guys to understand I'm going to ask you to check superheat and subcooling on every job. If that manufacturer gives you a charging chart, it'll be either operating pressures, here's my indoor conditions, here's my outdoor conditions, and here's what the head and the suction pressure should be. Okay, when I read it on the nameplate, whether they say it or not, guys, when I read subcooling targets on nameplates, that is cooling. That is cooling only target. It don't matter what's going on at the evaporator, guys. I got to ask that condenser how he's doing. I got two different containers, so to speak, that are piped together. I got to see what my refrigerant level is in both of those. And the reason I always focus on that first is because you've already got all the stuff. Does everybody have a voltmeter?
Yeah.
Do you have an ammeter? Do you have a thermometer? We'll also be spending some time dealing with what not to do or what not to use. How many of you have an infrared thermometer? I had a chiller job one time, guys, that this is an air-cooled chiller at a local library. This thing was tripping a circuit breaker. It was tripping a circuit breaker about twice a week. And I would go there and what do? You reset the breaker, check things out, right? It's running perfect. Okay, it's running perfect. But it kept happening to me, so I said, this time I'm just going to camp out here. I'm staying here. And I hung out for about 3 hours, still monitored all the vital signs on this thing. But I went into the mechanical room and I decided to start checking the temperatures of the panel box. And I went right down the line of those breakers. And it was interior, so I mean it was generally indoor temperature, 75, 76, 74, 75, 89, 75. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of an OODA loop, but it stands for observation, orientation, decision, and action. It is something that is part of the process for tactical response. If you think about this cycle, guys, it makes you slow your mind down and you don't miss anything. And again, that's part of the procedure. I know when I first got in the field, I was all about trying to work fast. Man, I need to be fast. You don't need to be fast. You need to be right, so I'm not burning up time going back. So if you immediately come up and say, oh, I see that all the time with this brand of equipment you got, I'm already in a panic on the inside, man. Oh, this guy's already called me and told me, you know, he's already come up and told me my unit's junk. So we're going to start with the customer interview, and these things are in order. I need to speak with that customer and know what's going on. And then we're going to go into some actual measurement and check the CFM, the cubic feet per minute of airflow flowing through this system. That has to come before my refrigerant measurements, guys. I have had a sausage, egg, and cheese from Burger King. Have y'all?
Yeah.
Sausage, egg. Was it from this one?
No.
Because I had one at this one here. I had one up in Raleigh, Charleston, South Carolina, Reno, Nevada. I've had that sausage, egg, and cheese. That's one of my favorites. And you know what? It's the same thing every time. It's the same thing. Don't matter where you order it from, it's the same thing. How in the world do they do that? Well, don't the guy have the same raw materials? He's got the same tools and instruments, right? He probably watched the same how to build a sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit video, right? Got the same training. Guys, that's what franchising is. If you can bring a consistent process to your service call, then what you do is get a very predictable, successful result every single time. It does not matter where you're at. It does not matter what that reported problem is. You're going to get that same product. We can take that same approach to a service call. Number one, I don't miss anything. Strategy. This strategy might not work for you. Switch it around, make it work, make it yours in the field, and then you're going to take ownership of it, and then you're going to do it. But have some kind of game plan on every call you go to. This is where I'm at first. This is what I do next. Went to one house one time, and I had nothing, man. I started the unit. It had come on, and nothing was coming out of any of the vents. It's like, this is crazy. I hear it running. I walked down the hallway, and that 20 by 20 return valve blew me down. Has anybody ever stepped off one of these and broke the sheetrock and stepped through a ceiling?
One of my coworkers.
Okay. Okay. Have you ever done it twice? Okay. Okay, Ryan. I'm hoping you remember now. Did you do it a third time? Okay, so that's okay then. Twice, I mean, sometimes we get it. The one time it happened to me, I remembered for good because it weren't a leg. Dude, I landed downstairs. I kind of catapulted myself off of the walk, and you know, you get down there, you bust it up a little bit up under your arms, but you're just glad both legs went in the same joist spot, right? Any other airflow related issues here? I mean, it's kind of like I went to the bargain barn, and so that air cleaner ain't quite the same size as my furnace. You know, is that okay? It was on clearance, Jason. I got a deal, so I just made it fit. I sized my plenum to the size of the air cleaner, and then I stuck both of them on here with what, at least a 25 or 30% blockage right here, right? I had a guy call me one time, and I'm kidding you, he went through all the numbers and it just screamed out, you've got an airflow issue here. And he measured the airflow 2 different ways, man, and I mean, it was right on the money. And I spent some time on the phone with this guy, and finally he asked me, he said, well, let me ask you a question. He said, are them triangles supposed to be in there? And what he meant by the triangles were the apex plates on the end of the coil. He removed all the triangles before he put the coil in. He had the perfect amount of CFM. It was just bypassing that coil and going to the wrong places. Now, have y'all ever heard of sensible heat? So we got 2 different types of heat, guys. We got sensible and latent. Sensible heat initiates a temperature change. Now, what is the purpose of that TP temperature pressure chart? There's an app for that as well. Well, what is the purpose of that card, guys? What does it do? Why do I need to know those temperature pressure numbers? What's the first thing I read when I hook up gauges?
Pressures.
Pressures, but they mean something. I have a room temperature, in here of somewhere around 72.5 degrees. So can anybody identify that refrigerant that's in this cylinder right here? Now this cylinder had those same temperatures. Seems to be reading about 130 psig. See, there's a condition that this chart applies to, and no time else. It applies to a condition called saturation. Have you guys heard that term before? Saturated conditions. You guys familiar with some of these keyboard cleaners, some of this compressed air? Where does it get its pressure from? Well, there's some juice in the bottom, right? It's not refrigerant, but it's got some similar properties. So I've essentially got my thermometer taped to this can. I got some liquid, I got some vapor in the top. And right now it's at equilibrium, pretty much stabilized to the room air temperature, right? Because I've got saturated conditions, guys, if I change the temperature, I'm going to change the pressure. You ever heard anybody say the unit's doing all it can do? Yeah. Okay, 30 years ago, that means I hooked up the blue gauge and I felt the line. Seemed good, it's doing all it can do. It's a relative term, right? And then a little while later, I learned something about superheat subcooling and telling those real levels in the system. I mean, heck, man, I might not even hook up my red gauge because, Ryan, that's the red emergency gauge, right? You hook it up if something looks wrong on the blue one. Maybe I'll try that one in the morning from now on. I don't know what you guys had from lunch, but, you know, just, yeah. Okay. I'll stick to HVAC then, okay? Stick to my day job. And remember, don't let any particular lab get you jammed up. We're going to go through these and talk about them. So don't feel like you got to spend, you know, a half hour on just one. If you don't know it, just pass it.
Keep up on cold days. But that's good. Okay. What's this one here? Just a default board, huh? Or is it a circuit board? That's what they did for those boards. Wow. Put it down. No, you got to put it right there.
Yeah, brings in the 240. Power. Responsible for powering the outdoor condenser as also brings in a 24 volts from the thermostat.
And remember, you've got a no-start flow chart or a triage process for electrical in your workbook if you want to follow that. But right now, it's just a fan not coming on.
So it's 24. It's VAC. So it's 35 of those.
So, guys, we're looking at, on the shady side of the unit, the air pulling into the condenser. You know, we're looking at about 84 degrees.
No.
No display?
No.
Sounds like no voltage at the thermostat. Where is that voltage come from? What power is that stat?
24 volts. Yeah.
I say we jumper it out and see if there's any other problems with the unit, because I sure don't want to go tell somebody that's I found it and that's all, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we've got a jumper here. Okay, and are those line temperatures? Looks like line temperatures. So you got your pressures, your line temperatures, your superheat and subcooling. The reason it's falling, guys, is because I can't get rid of the heat out of the vapor, so I don't make as much liquid over here. Whenever we look at any charging data, whether it's the table or a graph form or something along these lines, guys, every one of these charts asks you for something. Wet bulb varies with indoor relative humidity. Okay? So don't let anybody tell you, hey, just dry bulb minus a certain point. Measure it. Measure it and see what the real load is coming to this.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Teron Rogers. I work with ARS. I was here today at the David Cameron. We were in the actual service strategy training. Great class. Everybody was participating. Mr. David gave a bunch of valuable information that I know is going to help me as I continue to go further. I suggest anybody, if you have any thoughts of coming to take any type of training classes, definitely give Mr. David Cameron a call. You won't regret it. We had a great time. Everything was interactive. It's wonderful.